I was very fond of Thomas Wooden Railway toys when I was younger. I remember my ultimate fantasy goal at the time was to create an entire island of Sodor using all the sets and models available. It was just an unrealistic pipe dream of mine. The place where me and my mother would frequently buy each set and engine was a Michael's craft store nearby my home. They always had a toy section in the back of the wooden craft material aisle. My mother at the time built birdhouses as a hobby. We trusted each other whenever we went to different stores. The wooden materials were on the opposite aisle of where the Thomas stuff was. I was about 6 years old at the time and excitedly ran straight to the aisle with all the Thomas stuff, while my mom went to the opposite aisle, opposite of mine. I think the newest character at that time was Mighty Mac, and I began browsing the shelves looking for it. Out of the corner of my eye on my left side, on the far side of the aisle up against the wall, there was a man standing there. He was tall, very skinny. He had scruffy stubble on his face. I remember seeing a lot of acne. He had a blank expression on his face, but he was looking at me. He had his head down, but his eyes were locked on me. I kept taking short glances over to where the man was standing. I saw his mouth was moving, but I didn't hear any words. As I parted through each wooden railway model, I finally found what I was looking for and stood up. Now, I didn't even hear him move. The man was right next to me. He smelled like a sweaty locker room. Like any kid who was shy and I just thought I did something wrong. I quickly backed up and said, "Sorry," meekly. He smiled and repeated to talk.
"You like Thomas?"
he said. I nodded slightly. He then said,
"I like Thomas too. I work here and we have more stocked sets in the back. Come with me and I'll show you."
Even though I was a young kid, I was not stupid. This guy clearly didn't work for Michael's, and by his disheveled appearance, I doubted it from the moment he stood in front of me. He reached out his hand and I sprinted out of the aisle to the next one and screamed for my mom. I then heard footsteps running away from the aisle, further and further away from where we were. The man was gone. My mom just consoled me and we left the store after reporting the incident to the front desk. I don't know if they ever caught the guy, but it was once a place I loved going to. I stayed well away from it for a very long time. When I was a toddler, I grew up loving trains and railways. So when a day out with Thomas event came around to my home of Stroudsburg, PA, my parents surprised me with tickets to the event. I was 5 years old at the time and I was so excited. When we got there was a man dressed as Sir Topham Hatt that had a huge, real Thomas the Tank Engine locomotive that we got to ride on, and it had many displays of different toys and Tomy models. Me loving Tomy models, I sprinted towards the tent, excited to see the massive display that they had running. I sat in front of the large table surrounded by other kids my age and older. I then felt a hand on my shoulder. I didn't think much of it, I just thought it was my dad.
"They're cool, aren't they?"
The voice was not my father's, but another kid, who was older, probably 13 to 14 years old. I just simply replied, "Yeah." "Who are you? Why are you touching me?" He introduced himself as Jack. He said it was okay for guys to touch like this. I was now insanely confused and weirded out by this. When I tried to move away, he grabbed me harder by my shoulders and it hurt. And he grabbed me somewhere else that I don't think I need to say where. When he grabbed me there, I screamed, but that did nothing to part the crowd of kids around everything. Somehow, I don't know how, I managed to duck myself down and crawl through a bunch of adults' legs and got myself out of the crowd. The moment I saw my dad, I ran right to him with tears in my eyes, crying, and through hiccups, told him everything that happened. He angrily forced his way through the crowd and asked to point out the kid. But this kid was nowhere to be found. We reported the incident to staff there, and it was some on-duty police officers who went looking for this person. We left the event early that day. I don't know exactly what came of this, but I like to think they caught whoever this kid was. I don't know for certain, though. I'll never forget this experience. It's just me and my brother. We were home alone. Even though I was in middle school, I still loved Thomas a lot. I had a little brother who was 5 years younger than I was. He loved Thomas too. In fact, I would say he was downright obsessed. I was tasked with watching him while our parents were out. We had basically gorged ourselves on candy and soda for the night, and we were watching an old Thomas VHS tape. The Best of Gordon, I think it was. We were about 2 episodes in when I thought I heard footsteps coming from outside. I thought nothing of it, probably thinking my parents were home. We lived in a suburban neighborhood that was pretty quiet. There wasn't a lot of crime that happened around there. The footsteps came closer, and I heard the front yard gate squeak open. The footsteps made its way up the path to the front door. There was a large window next to the door that faced the front yard. We had curtains covering it, but we could just barely see through them. These were single footsteps. I realized it wasn't my parents then. I paused the tape and was now getting suspicious as I watched the front door. My brother was mad at me that I paused the video, but I told him to stay quiet. Whoever was outside was now right in front of the front door. We saw the doorknob rattle, then stop. The doorknob rattled again, this time more aggressively, followed by pounding. The door was absolutely shaking from whoever was punching the outside of it. I told my brother to grab a knife from the kitchen and hide behind the couch. I quickly grabbed one myself and put one of the chairs up against the doorknob and quickly got out my phone to dial 911. We heard a man screaming,
Open this fucking door right now! I know you're in there! Open it fucking right now!
The 911 operator told me to stay on the line as in between tears, I was trying to stay as quiet as possible. My brother was full on sobbing at this moment. The man was banging on the door still, and we heard scraping sounds against the wood. It wasn't until I saw flashing blue and red lights that I felt somewhat safer. There was a commotion outside. We heard police officer yell, "Drop the fucking knife," followed by a buzzing sound. It wasn't until the police finally came to the door that I opened it. 2 other officers had this disheveled older man being pushed into the cruiser. My parents were called and they came home as quickly as they could to this absolute nightmare of a scene. They comforted us the whole night following this. The man who apparently tried to break in was on drugs. The scraping sound was him slashing his knife into the front door's wood. It's been 18 years since this happened, and me and my brother are both fully grown. I have a kid myself now, and I tell him this story to warn him of bad people when I'm not around.